Hi, welcome to Sheikhy's Sports Journeys. Thanks again for joining the podcast. Been a while since I've covered somebody's journey in life, sport, and their professional career. Great guest for you today. This woman has a very impressive background. Played cricket for Warwickshire County Cricket Club, board of directors at Wales Cricket Board, and a highly qualified doctor with the NHS, which we'll touch on as well as this podcast goes on. I say hello and assalamu alaikum to Dr. Samara Afzal. How are you?
Assalamu alaikum and hello. I am well. How are you?
I'm good, alhamdulillah, all good, all good. We just touched on the fact that, trying to put a 4-year-old to bed just before this podcast started, that had some joys this evening, but I'm glad she is now settled. And your little one was watching the iPad, and I hope she'll be sleeping now as well. So let's see the joys of parenthood. So I want to just kind of go straight into your life journey, and what you've, growing up, etc., going into cricket, and then your journey going into becoming a doctor as well. But let's start right at the start. Um, where did you grow up? Tell me a bit about your family background, parents, siblings, school, all those kind of things.
So I grew up in a inner city part of Dudley. A lot of people in England have heard of Dudley because it's famous for its not so pleasant accent. So I grew up there, not in the best of environments. Me and my brother were actually the only Pakistanis at our primary school, and as a result, we actually faced a lot of racism, constantly harassed, and it didn't help, obviously, that parents at the time had a corner shop. So the kids from school would come, and then you'd be kind of nicknamed the pea shop children and things. So it wasn't the greatest, I think, journey. Primary school, secondary school. Then my mum actually moved us moved our school to another school, which is about 20 minutes away, and she had to really fight for us to go to that school just because of the abuse we were getting. And I think that was the best thing to happen. So it was a much more affluent area. Both me and my brother did well. We made decent friends, good company. So that I think was a bit of a game changer for me. And I think obviously credit to my parents for recognizing that we were at a school where we were getting bullied, and we changed. So and then again, growing up, memories of playing cricket. So it was my dad, my uncles, my cousins. It was like a weekly thing to go and play cricket in the park, and they would take all of us kids along, including the girls as well. Which, looking back now, actually is a big thing, because to this day now I've got, patients, for example, they've got children, they've got daughters who've never gone to the park with their father. So looking back, that was quite a thing. And I remember it came to an age when you kind of reach puberty, and I remember people saying to my father, actually, do you really think she should be playing with us, with because friends of my dad's and older cousins, and he kind of said, well, I think we have to stop taking you along with us now, because some people are finding it a little bit inappropriate. And I remember being quite upset, because I absolutely loved cricket, and it was the one thing I'd look forward to all week, particularly when, as I said, at school wasn't always the greatest experience. So it was like a little respite going out playing cricket. And I remember saying to him that it's not my fault I'm a girl, because if I was a boy, you'd still be taking me. But because I'm a girl, that's why you're having to stop. And that actually really upset him. And so he then found me a club to play cricket at. And at the time, I mean, now it's brilliant. We've got women's and girls cricket clubs within 10, 15 minutes of each area. But at that time, the nearest club to us was about 45 minutes. So my father used to drive me once a week, go to training, and then there were matches. And then by the time I got into college, started learning to drive, then I kind of found my own club, joined, took myself to training. So yeah, it was an interesting childhood.
Well, it sounds like a lot of fun. Sounds like your mom and your dad certainly had your best wishes always at heart. But something that I've grown up and you realize when you come from a South Asian family is it's all about respect and all about, what other people sometimes think is best thing to do. And, I can look back at things when I was a kid and my dad would say, oh, we can't do that because such and such, or your uncle said this, or similar to what you were talking about. And you know, our parents struggle, but you know, being a South Asian, it's you know, you don't just fob that kind of stuff off. You kind of take it to heart. How do you know, how do you think your dad ended, you know, not kind of help knock that barrier down, and what kind of part did you play? You obviously challenged your father a little bit to say, well, if I was a boy, you wouldn't be having this conversation with me. So how did your father, because it's good and important for maybe other parents to hear this as well, because I don't think parents always deal with that kind of situation very well.
I think it was difficult for my dad because me and my father are very close. So, and he, he's absolutely adored me and my brother. He's never sort of a difference between us both. If anything, I probably think I'm the more spoilt one by my father. So I think for him it was a conflict of relatives, playing cricket with them, people not approving, and then but at the same time breaking my heart because I wanted to play cricket. And I think that's why he went to the effort of saying, okay, let's find the girls' club, let's get you there. And then, even though he'd have a really busy week at work, because he had a job and then he was helping my mum in the shop. And, despite that, he would still take out that time that, and he wouldn't have much else in terms of time to rest for himself, but we'd still take out that journey, sometimes an hour to drop me to training, and then, or an hour to drop me to matches and come back. So I think it helps if you've got a parent that's understanding. And I think the other thing obviously that helps is in South Asians, and I'm probably sure with your family as well, there is big thing about education. And I think had I not been concentrating on my studies, or had I not been achieving well, I'm not sure if, particularly my mum would be that keen on me playing cricket. But the fact that I knew that I had to kind of meet the expectations. My mum always wanted me to be a doctor, and I think wanted to be at some point a politician and then a journalist. But she always wanted me to be a doctor, so it was kind of like with my mum that little bit of okay, you become the doctor, you work hard, and fine, you carry on playing cricket. Whereas with my dad, it was more like, no, you do what you enjoy. And I remember actually even at medical school, I think I was third or fourth year exams, and my mum was absolutely livid with my dad for saying this, but he saw me, I would wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, be studying, going to sleep late, drinking lots of coffee to get through. And then he just came in one day and said, you know what, if it's too hard, just leave it, forget it, you don't have to do it. And so that was my dad. And I think, of course, at that point, I wasn't going to give up. And it was hard across the board for everybody who was doing medicine, but not just medicine, but any other degree. But because I had that in the back of my mind, that pressure's automatically gone. And I would say to parents that make sure that you've got your child back in that sense, because not everyone is kind of geared to do medicine. Not everyone is geared to do law and accountancy. Some children are naturally artistic, they're geared that way. Some are naturally sporty, that's where they're geared to. But if we don't push them into what we want them to do and let them kind of find their own way, at the same time saying, obviously realistically, long term, you have to have a job and putting that kind of thing. But I think that's what helped me, is that I knew that my dad if I, for example, really struggled, he would have said, actually, don't worry. I think with my mum, it was a bit different. It was, whatever happens, you're going to be a doctor. You have to be a doctor.
I think it's interesting to listen to, because your dad is obviously a big part of your journey with, playing sport, and I'm sure was supported you very much with your education as well. But he sounds a bit more of the kind of, let you kind of evolve and go. And then your mum, Auntie, sounds like, the this is, I want my daughter to become a doctor. But you also touched on the fact that when you and your brother were getting, abused and not in a nice situation, it was your mum that sorted that situation out, got you into a better situation. So in some ways, I think your parents' balance probably was quite good, because it's kind of like good cop, bad cop. Your mum was probably, I can imagine you probably could pull the wool over your dad's eyes a little bit more. I think he sounds like you were a daddy's girl, whereas with your mum, she was she probably was just kind of, she brought, there's never any bad intentions behind that, but I think parents sometimes can go overboard, and that's why it's important probably to have two figures, that one's a you know, a little bit easier going than the other. But your parents, I mean, you talked about your dad, 20 minutes when you're running a shop, and I know how busy a lifestyle that can be, that long hours, you know, taking an hour out of his day to go and take his daughter. Sometimes traffic would have, I imagine, played a part. It could even take even longer, then get back to the shop, then somebody to come and pick you up from cricket as well. You know, the sacrifice that your parents do in those situations is remarkable. But on the cricket front, I've not really managed to probe you on that. So what were your kind of, you know, you obviously had a passion for it. It was in the blood, family played it. What did you early days start to kind of, what were you good at?
I naturally became a bowler, and my theory for this is it's because the person that I played most cricket with growing up was my brother. So my brother is very kind of boyish, and the thing we had in common obviously was cricket. So yeah, we'd both want to just play cricket. So
So he
he
got
was
you to bowl
naturally
at him, basically. He would get
that, but I think he scared me off batting because he was actually quite
quite
quick.
quick.
He
Okay.
started actually as a quick bowler, so he was quite quick. So I remember batting against him with his tape ball, and I'd be like, "Oh, okay, this is a bit quick. Fine, I'll leave the batting. I'll bowl." And I think as a result, I bowled more and became more of a bowler naturally.
So were you a seamer were you a right arm
So
seamer?
I bowl medium pace
Okay.
basically.
Okay.
It swings. I think it's just the snap action. So typically away swing. I'm working on my batting. I would say it's never too late to anyone who plays cricket. And last week, actually, for the first time, I donned the keeping gloves and realised
All
actually
right.
then
Okay.
that's a lot of fun too. So yeah, mainly playing as a medium pace bowler, but then recently in the last 3 or 4 years, I've kind of started to take the batting a little bit seriously because I've
Good.
realised actually when you're playing a long game and you're just bowling and then the whole innings of batting, you're just sitting out waiting for the innings to finish.
And you can also score important runs, still getting that important 15, 20, 25 to help your team get over the line. But yeah, if you can, yeah, it can be a bit boring sometimes if you don't do both skills. So there's still time to become a genuine all rounder. I've got faith in you. So when did you start? You mentioned, so you went to this all girls cricket team. What was it like? How did you find the environment going in there? Because I can imagine you probably would have been one of very few South Asian girls that were part of that, especially at that time. You know, when it really was, if a girl from a South Asian background played cricket, it was very new.
Yeah, it was really different for me because it was again in a very affluent part of the area. It was about 40 minutes drive, and most of these girls were part of this prestigious college in that area, and they were part of their team. There wasn't any other Asian apart from me. And there was also at the time the former England fast bowler Lucy Pearson, very tall, 6 foot. So it was slightly intimidating as well. And most of them had this posh kind of private school accent. And then there was me from this inner city area. So I think I was quite nervous and originally very shy. But and then I played there for a couple of years. But then when I started going to college and driving, then I actually found a closer club. And at that point, that was complete other spectrum. So that was Handsworth Cricket Club. I don't know if you've heard of it, but
I have heard of
completely
it.
very Afro-Caribbean. A lot of the kids have from there have joined the ACE program. So that was that was literally like having a party every week. We've got the music on in the background, barbecue every Saturday. So that was a completely different experience. And then I think I found like a mid between the two clubs, which is Warmley. So I was at Warmley Cricket Club for 15, 16 years. And that's, again, a prestigious club in the sense it's got given rise to England players. So Chris Wokes is from Warmley, Amy Jones, she's from Warmley. If anything, she started when she was about 11 or 12, and I was there. And it was great now to see her play for England because I remember her still coming to the club as a child, and you could just tell she was just super talented and she'd play for England. So it's been nice having different clubs to play for, and I think over the years it just has built my confidence from being completely shy to being kind of intimidated by the educated girls with their posh accent to actually then being able now to be able to fit in. And currently at the club I'm captain. I am also the chair of the ladies committee. So, have that mentoring kind of role as well for the younger girls. And it's great to see because most of the girls, well, 70% is South Asian. To go from me being the only South Asian girl to now captaining a club 20 years on, which is pretty much a lot South Asian girls, and it is a nice mix and everybody gets on well. So it is nice to see what's changed over the years.
That's brilliant. Love to hear about things like that. I like your different experiences as well, from going from, that posh, which would have probably been quite a stringent, strict, you turn up, everyone's got all the good kit, I could imagine. And you're coming from a totally different environment, but then going into that sounds like a community spirit kind of cricket club, and it's good to have different experiences and take them all in. Would you encourage, being somebody who's very successful in your professional career and as well as in your sport, but would you encourage all kids to get involved in some sort of sport? And what would you say is the
Absolutely.
importance of it?
100% absolutely. I advocate sports to every child, not just because of the enjoyment aspect of it, of course, it's fun, but more importantly, from the physical and mental health aspect. Now, unfortunately, as a GP, I'm seeing a lot of South Asian, particularly children who are in their early teens who have got a massive problem with obesity, just not doing any exercise, eating lots of junk food. I mean, the South Asian diet, which isn't our fault, it's just our diet, which has been passed on for generations, is one of the most unhealthiest diets. And on top of that, having all the junk food, all the takeaways and things, it's not helping. And I see so many children and I ask them why they aren't playing football, why they aren't playing cricket. And sadly, parents haven't got time to take them to after school clubs or to join any other club. The only sport they're playing is actually PE at school, and that's all they're doing. And then after that, they're at home on their computers, consoles. And the other thing is, of course, mental health. And COVID actually showed us the impact that staying at home, not socializing, had on the mental health of not just adults, but particularly children. We saw a massive rise in children as well with mental health issues. And sport naturally gets you outside, fresh environment, socializing with people. It builds your confidence. It gives you those team building skills. So it's so important. I can't kind of explain how important it is to play a sport, any sport, just something that your child enjoys. Get them doing that. Join them to a club. It might be an effort, but actually it will be of huge benefit to them over the long term.
So is this something that, when you're dealing with your patients now on a day-to-day basis, is this something that you're trying to drive with your patients? I'm sure there's other elements of when you're seeing your patients as well, but trying to be active, going for walks, even trying to join some sort of these things. That do you have some sports clubs in your toolkit that you suggest sometimes to some of your patients to try and get them to make it easier for them to access things? Because I think sometimes people don't even realize. I know we've got the internet, but it's actually, you can look at something, but actually going there, and it's quite daunting for some people to go and join a sports club. Whereas if somebody's got an insight into some clubs that are around the area, or so, is that something that you try to bring into your work?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think one of the problems is, particularly where I work, very deprived in the city population and a lot of South Asians, is that actually a lot of the mums are from Pakistan or from India or from Bangladesh, and they don't really know where they can take their children in terms of sports clubs. And parents are usually busy working, so dads are usually busy working either businesses or taxis or shops, and they're not coming home till late night. And unfortunately, not the mum's fault at all, but they're not aware of what services. So actually, one of my practices that I worked, we actually did a pilot project where we got girls from the South Asian community, from who are my patients, mums and girls, to come and play cricket for 6 to 8 weeks in an indoor centre once a week, and I coached them. And a lot of these women actually hadn't even stepped out of the house other than to go grocery shopping or go out to family functions. So for them, because I was their GP, their families trusted them to come over, and they absolutely loved it. And they wanted to actually carry on in the summer holidays as well, outdoors. So it can happen. I think we just need time, resources, and make more, I think, women's only facilities as well, because these women and girls wouldn't have come, I know, if it hadn't been women's and girls only. So I think we need to drive that more as well and just emphasize on how important it is for
Yeah,
women
I
of
think
like
that
South Asians.
I think this is where people like yourself are such important role models, and people, because people are may look at you and think, well, you look familiar to me, and make them feel a little bit more comfortable. And I think the fact that you've done it, people will buy into that more, and they'll feel a little bit more comfortable. The fact that you're kind of giving them that insight, whereas I think, yeah, we actually at my cricket club, um, we're trying to do something at the moment. We had a few South Asian women that came down to the all women's team, but the nets and stuff were on, and all the guys were netting there as well. And obviously they felt a little bit uncomfortable. So we're trying to now basically make it that when the women's training's on, that's the women's training, no nets for the guys, just to try and make it a bit more comfortable when they come down, because that's what inclusivity is all about. Everybody has different needs and requirements, and we have to try and look at all of them when we're building a team. So when did you start to break into the kind of, because you played cricket for Warwickshire Cricket Club. How did you get to that success? So you've touched on the fact that you turned up as a young girl to a new cricket club, but you haven't told me, you haven't told me about any of your achievements. So you must have done pretty well in youth to then get recognised to play with the county.
So I just happened to be training with my club at the time, with Warmley, and because they had a very strong connection to Warwickshire, they asked me to come to trials, and I trialed for them, and they liked my bowling, so I got selected, which was again a bit of a shock because I'd never had any formal coaching ever, so I'd never had one-to-one coaching. We'd only had like the group sessions that we did, and even then, as I said, it was just kind of coming bowling, not as structured as you see nowadays. And the other thing was I was in the same, so Edgbaston, where we trained with Warmley, the Edgbaston indoor net. It was Moeen Ali's father's academy.
All right, okay.
They were training there at the same time. So I remember someone said, "Oh, I'll introduce you to Uncle Manu, who's Moeen's father," and he was like, "Oh, okay, why don't you come and play with us?" So then I used to come and train with their boys on Sundays, which again was a great experience. Moeen at the time hadn't played for England. He was, I think, 17 or 18, and it was nice to be able to again be accepted as the only girl, and you kind of feel a bit awkward thinking how are they going to react, but they're all very welcoming and very sweet. And again, I wouldn't bat with them because they were quite quick, but I'd come regularly bowl again every Sunday, and I think that helped me a lot as well, developing in terms of cricketing skills.
So what age were you then when Warwickshire said, come on board and play for us?
So I was 17, 18.
17. Wow. And what was your first, do you remember your first game for Warwickshire?
I do remember, and I got, I think, 2 wickets.
On your debut, against?
Oh, I've got a feeling it was Wales.
Wales. And then how long did you play for Warwickshire? How many did you play youth? Did you develop into senior? How was it? Were you playing for an under 17, 19s team to start with?
No, so I went straight into the senior team. I think because I was pretty much 18, so I went straight into the senior team, and I played for a couple of years. But then, because at that point medical school training became quite intense, I then had to take a step back from training. And the other thing was, at the time, Warwickshire were going on tours and things. So again, I couldn't join them on that tour. So I think obviously automatically those girls that are available and seem to be fully committed, I think then you automatically don't then make the squad. And again, a lot of them were having one-to-one training. A lot of them were training twice a week, sometimes in the daytime. But because I had university, it was difficult to train. And I know it's different. So even with Warwickshire, I know now you can have a professional contract and they will support you in studying or doing a diploma but back then it was kind of, you couldn't really juggle, and I'm sure it probably was the same with men. You couldn't really juggle going to university in the daytime.
Not that I shared the same level of intelligence that you have, but it wasn't as easy. to study. Now I think it's a lot better. Like you can go for both basically, and you've got that level of support. Whereas I'm assuming when you became unavailable, it then affected you to, somebody else would take your
Mm.
place and perform. Wasn't that easy then to get back in?
Yeah, and I think also back then as well, I think it was changing. So if you were just a good bowler, you wouldn't make it, and my fielding wasn't amazing. But again, I think fielding is one of the things you have to keep practicing. And I think one of the things, maybe not regrets, I think if I could go back, or what I think it's great now for young girls is actually they've got straight into a setup at the age of 11, 12. You're doing fielding every week, you're doing bowling every week, you're doing batting every week. When you come in raw, like myself, just as a bowler, because you've been bowling on the streets, but you've never fielded, no one's ever taught you fielding technique, you've never been taught to hold a bat. There's only so much you're going to be able to contribute, and there's only so much you're going to kind of be able to compete with those girls that have been in the system, have been regularly practicing all three domains. So I think that, I wouldn't say it was my fault that happened, but at the same time, I don't think they put the effort in either at the time. Counties, I don't think they would think, okay, this is someone raw, they've only really been bowling. Okay, let's take them aside and do some fielding with them, or let's take them aside and do some batting with them. If anything, I remember one of the managers at Warwickshire, female manager, and I still remember to this day because I was really upset by it. It was something to do with catching, and she said, why are you catching like this? And it was said in a very kind of derogatory, unpleasant manner. And I do look at that, and I do think that actually back in those days they didn't think, but this person's never been taught how to field. Why am I kind of taking the mick? Why am I not just taking them to the side and saying, okay, this is how you catch a ball? I think I had a habit of catching the ball above my eye level. Now, obviously, I know the technique and everything, but then it was you kind of almost got thrown in to the deep end and then had to fight around because everybody was clued up with technique.
Yeah, I think old school mindset of coaching. I look back at a lot of times when I was coached as well, and yeah, it can be quite rough at times. Like and it really doesn't have a positive effect, especially on youngsters, because it's the fear of failure. It's you get scared to drop that catch then,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's important. So you've obviously evolved and you're now a coach as well in cricket. What's your style? Do you think you picked up a lot of, obviously you've done your badges to have a certain level, but in your actual style of coaching, do you think you've evolved it and learned from things that you were coached on, good things and some bad things, and taken a bit of everything?
Yeah, I think so. I think I've got, by nature, I think I'm quite gentle, and I don't think you need to be aggressive in your mannerisms to try and coach. And I think it's always about encouragement. So even now, when we're doing fielding drills, and if someone drops the ball, I will still encourage them and say, "Good, great effort." And um, if and I think you have to build that trust and that respect, because then I get girls coming to the side and say, "Oh, can you just show me this? I don't know how to do this." And um, then you can work with them as well. And again, if I'm one of those people, so even if I'm not coaching and I'm playing for my club and I'm simply training, I will still watch a youngster, and if they're struggling with something and I can see, I will go up to them and say, try and do this a bit differently, or try and do this, or I can notice, you're not getting your head over the ball. So I do try and help as much as I can, and I think that's important. I think when you've gone through the system and then you've learnt so much, I mean, not learned enough to obviously become professional, your kind of level cricketer, but when you've learnt, you've seen various coaching styles, I think it's great to be able to help these youngsters now that are coming through in the system.
Something you mentioned that was interesting was you wanted to be a politician or a journalist. And obviously your mum's dream was that her golden daughter is going to become a doctor. When did you start to buy into that? Like, obviously, to become a doctor, it's hard. Studies and the amount of time you need to put into it, it's a serious commitment. You can't flog it and become a doctor. You have to really put the yards in. But the fact that you maybe weren't that passionate about becoming it, was there a shift at any point, or did you have to battle with yourself sometimes to get through the challenges of studying to become a doctor?
I think because my own aspirations were a little bit extreme, it was easier for my parents to kind of push me into medicine because when I wanted to be a journalist, I wanted to be one of those war journalists. So I remember at the time when I was young, the Iraq War was going on,
You
and
wanted
I
to
used
get
to
right
watch.
in there, and your
I wanted
mom's
to get
like, let's
there.
just keep you going this way, please.
Yes, so I used to watch Christian Amanpour. I don't know if you watch your work for CNN, still going strong. And I used to think, wow, look at this lady. She's standing in the middle of a war zone in Baghdad and she's reporting, I want to do that. So obviously Dad was like, no, we love you. We don't want you to be doing these kind of crazy things.
Yeah.
And then the politician thing, obviously, that was never going to happen really. At that time, a brown female who was never going to become a politician again. Things have changed now. But so for that reason, because my career aspirations were a bit kind of say over exaggerated, I think it was easier for them to say, okay, or more so to say the doctor. And I can looking back see why parents want children to become doctors. I don't think it's just a status thing. I think it is the fact that actually it's a relatively stable career. You can get a job pretty much anytime. And again, if it doesn't work out here in this country, you can always go abroad and get a job. So I think from that perspective, I can see why parents push into medicine. But then now I think sports is actually financially feasible career as well, particularly women's cricket has expanded so much. Before when I played for Warwickshire, you didn't get anything. You didn't get paid. In fact, you had to buy your own kit. I don't know about you guys, but we had to buy our
Yeah,
own
same,
kit.
same. Playing for Scotland, junior cricket, had to pay for all of that stuff. Your parents were a big part of probably funding a lot of your travel and expenses and stuff.
Mm.
So yeah, times have changed. I mean, there is a route now for young girls to be go through the route of going towards becoming professional cricketers. But yeah, I don't think that dream was really available to you in your time. So hence why your studies
Mm.
had to come first when even though you were probably gutted when they were off on another cricket tour and you had to stay at home and study, but you understood probably that, well, that's not going to pay the bills at the moment. This is,
Mm.
I need to think about my future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at that time it wasn't financially, there was nothing there. And it was kind of if you lapse from your studies as well, then there's nothing then to fall back on. So if I failed, then it was like, well, what am I going to do? I can't just play cricket when it wasn't even financially viable as an option.
Yeah. What age were you when you qualified when you qualified as a doctor?
I was 23.
23. So that was after how many years did you go straight from high school straight into uni at 17, 18?
Yeah, so it was college 2 years, so school, college for 2 years, and medical school for 5 years, and then I graduated as a doctor.
Wow. So what was that kind of feeling like when you got to that pinnacle point? Obviously, family must be, are you the first doctor in the family?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so obviously very proud moment, but what did you feel like? Did you feel like a sense of relief? Did you always believe that you would get to that point, or did you ever have any doubts when it was hard? What kind of challenges do you go through when you're trying to become a doctor? I'm curious because I don't think I could last 2 minutes trying to even the thought about thinking about the studies makes me feel, I get nervous even thinking about it. How do you deal and cope with that through all those years?
So I was one of those people that would work really, really hard, just like start 2 months before the exams and literally be working from 5 o'clock in the
So you
morning
were teacher's
to
pet then,
11 o'clock.
Samara. You were like front of the class.
Probably
Yeah,
not front of the
that's
class,
good.
probably in the
That's
middle.
good.
But it was difficult for me because actually two of my closest friends both failed and they dropped, and then they got removed from a university, which was like, oh wait, a bit of a shock to the system because I thought once you got to medical school that is it. But then when I saw two of my friends um getting removed because they failed twice, I was like, oh okay, I need to put my head down,
Yeah.
really make sure I don't fail. So again, I knew I've always used to working hard, and I'm one of those people that can work well independently. So even for example, if I didn't understand lectures, I would know I'll go and grab the book and then I'll read myself, and I would just cram in the work to be honest and get it done. There was always that, what if I fail, or this is really hard? But then I think naturally when you've done exams, you always think, okay, I think I failed, but actually you come out and it's a pass. It was just a relief because the amount of studying was really, really difficult. Like it is hard waking up in the middle of the night, starting studying, and then I think, but then again, my parents have been very supportive, particularly my mum during studying. My mum's never made me do any housework, so I
Oh, you're
helped in the
lucky.
shop.
You'll be the envy of many South Asian girls
Yes,
across the country right now, because I think that doesn't normally happen. You normally that's one of the so your mum really was invested then. Sorry to cut you, but that is unusual for a young Pakistani girl to not be doing a bit of housework. As wrong as
no
that is,
housework.
I came from a different type of home. My mum made me do just as much housework as we had to do equal chores.
I like that concept. I think that's pretty fair.
Yeah, I think so as
I,
well. It's not done me any harm in later life. I'm reasonably domesticated now.
See, it pays off in the
Exactly.
long term.
I didn't feel that at the time though, when my mum was making me do the chores. I was like feeling very hard done by. But what was was your mum's thinking behind it? Just I want my kids to just focus on the studies and getting to where they need to get to.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I did well, I didn't, as in I helped in the shop. So they had the shop. So every time mum and dad, for example, needed to go out, I would help in the shop. I would do that. That was a daily thing for a couple of hours. But apart from that, I didn't have to do any housework. And I think that was what mum's thinking was actually you just focus on studying. So I didn't learn to cook until I was about 23. Didn't
23.
didn't
Wow.
really wash any dishes till then. So in that sense, it kind of I was quite lucky actually.
So it's not just your dad that you were the golden girl with. Your mum was she was auntie was obviously doing a lot to give you give you that entry, give you that best chance of making it. And it's just amazing the sacrifice your parents, when you hear stories like yourself of people that have gone on to become so successful in their careers, there's always a story behind it of the sacrifice of, more often than not, what parents do to help you get along. So shout out to your parents. That's you sound like you wouldn't be in the position you were, or maybe you would have got there, but it would have been a lot harder. But your mum and dad did their best to make it easy for you and your brother. So you're now a doctor. Did this allow you to start playing a bit more cricket, or was it like early career, like head down, long hours? What did you work in when you were early years in a doctor in a hospital environment?
Yeah, so first few years were a hospital environment, so that was actually quite intense. So particularly my first house job, that was a bit of a shock. So there was no such concept as 9 till 5. I mean, things again in the world of medicine have changed now as well because people are aware of their regulations and the European Working Time Directive. Back then it wasn't. It was kind of you're expected. And because I was a little bit of a geek, I wouldn't go home. So, for example, if I'm doing my job and I know all of my ward patients have still got outstanding jobs, I would stay there till late. So I'd start at 9 in the morning, and even though we technically finished at 5, but I would stay there till 8, sometimes 9 o'clock, just make sure finishing off everything. And then, of course, you had night shifts as well, so you'd be working 9 p.m. till 9 a.m. Very rarely, someone would be off sick, so you'd do a 24-hour shift. So a couple of times I did that, which was quite draining. But I think at the same time, because I was quite invested in working hard for those jobs, I got a lot of experience out of it, and I got a lot of teaching. So I remember some of my very old school consultants, they would always give me that extra time to teach me, knowing that actually she stays and looks after our patients till sometimes 9 o'clock in the evening when she doesn't have to. So they would always let me do, for example, if there's any procedures that needed doing on patients, any minor surgery that needed doing, that was all the exciting stuff. They'd always let me be the first person. So it was a kind of give and take thing. Now things even in medicine have changed a lot now. There's very defined roles. You can't do as much as you could do back then, but at the same time, it's more kind of friendly as well in terms of your work-life balance.
What did you kind of then go into to specialize in? Because you did your kind of apprenticeship almost when you go into the hospital. It sounds like that from speaking. I've got some friends now who have become doctors as well, and they talk about their early years in the hospital, and then some of them venture into different areas and specialize. What's your journey been like in medicine?
So I actually experienced a bit of everything before I went into general practice. So I started off doing a little bit of surgery. Not for me. I thought it was a very cutthroat profession, very male dominated, and um, how do I put this in a not so unpleasant way? Very kind of male misogynistic surgeons, and I think you had to be very assertive as a female to thrive in that profession. Whereas I don't have that. I'm very kind of soft spoken, a little bit timid, and I wasn't at the time. I don't think I would have survived in that kind of environment. Um, and then I did some intensive care. And again, that was quite depressing because I was in Stoke and I was in the multiple injuries unit in Stoke. And that was very depressing because it was literally an intensive care for young people, mainly who had been involved in road traffic accidents or motorway accidents. And they'd come in with like severe head injury, comas, and because
Life
they were quite
threatening,
young.
all life
Yeah.
threatening, yeah.
And you'd see all these young people on ventilators for kind of months and months, and eventually they would die of a complication like a chest infection, and that became quite depressing. And then for me, because I like speaking to people, I thought GP is the way to go. And because you're kind of dealing with everything, kids, adults, guidey, everything. So I enjoyed that part of it. And it was more family friendly because it's not, you don't have to do any night shifts, you don't have to do any weekends. So I then decided that GP, and actually I'm glad because I absolutely love my job. I go in every day. There are days when you kind of come home and you feel like crying because it's been a stressful day, but actually you enjoy your work, and it's actually nice to be able to make a difference to a lot of patients.
So interesting, something comes to mind. So as a GP, you have a list of patients that you have to see. Now, as patients get grumpy when we have to wait a bit longer past the waiting time to when the doctor sees you, and it happens. And now with the current circumstances, it's even hard. It's like I speak to people, and it's like hard to get an appointment, let alone see a doctor. But for you, you sound like somebody that really invests a real interest. Like, so if I look back at my GP doctor when I was a kid and go in grumpy, so grumpy, hardly wanted to talk to you. You would see him for what you were there for, and then it was like, yeah, off you go. No other. Whereas I'm, now noticing, I've not been to the doctor for a while, but when I did go to the doctor last, the doctor it was a different experience. As you get a little bit more of a conversation out of them. You strike me as the kind of person that you would want to, be warm to your patients, but how difficult is it to give that time and then not run over and juggle your full? Because that must, because how many people would you see in a day as a GP?
So on average, if you're just doing a normal clinic, you'd see face to face, you'll see about 30 patients. If you're on call, then you can continue to see more because you'll deal with all the emergencies. But I'm pretty good at time management actually. And I know that some things are going to take me longer and I need to give that due time. And I know some things, for example, someone comes in for a 1 day sore throat. I know I can deal with that within 5 minutes. So that frees up 5 minutes for a patient who will then need, instead of 10, but 15 minutes. So for me, my time management's pretty good. So I very rarely overrun. I think the most patients probably waited to see me is probably 20 minutes, but majority of patients don't wait more than 10 minutes to see me. So I think
I wish you were my doctor. I would be getting seen a lot, seen a lot quicker. But then the other part is, what happens when somebody really just wants to chat to you for an extra 5-6 minutes? How do you deal with that? Because you don't want to just, I'd imagine, cut somebody off, because some people like to talk more than others. So how do you cope? Because you talked about the fact that you're softly spoken. I can't imagine you being very right. Time for you to go.
so. A lot of the time, when someone wants to speak to you for more than their allotted time, it's because they're depressed or anxious or stressed. So for me, I try and get to what are you worried about? If they keep on talking about things, or if I get the sense that they're a bit stressed, I'll kind of get to the issue. And if they are depressed, or for example, if they've had a bereavement or something, I will let that naturally carry on, because I don't think I can rush that conversation, and I think it's not very kind of morally correct either. For if there was lost. Recently had a patient who just suddenly lost a young family member, and they actually came in for something else, but they just mentioned it, dropped it in conversation, and then I just took that time to make sure they were okay from a mental health perspective, find out how the rest of the family were coping. And with other patients, for example, if they're just waffling on about their dog or their neighbour, then sometimes you just kind of stand up and say, okay,
I've
right,
got a
better
busy
see the
day
next
ahead.
patient.
I've
Yeah,
got patients
that.
waiting. Okay, so you judge that accordingly when you need to kind of just, right, we need to just, I've got a patient waiting. But yeah, sometimes you don't know where those conversations could lead, or, somebody's wanting to speak about challenges they're facing. So, no, I think it's just, I find it very interesting. I find, you know, people that become doctors, sometimes I feel like they aren't passionate about their job. They kind of don't, I'm talking about more older era when I used to go, what I mentioned, they didn't really seem to enjoy it. It seemed like, whereas now I do meet more people who seem to have more of a passion for it, and you really can make a massive difference. I mean, you're almost like a doctor, but you could be a therapist and many other things as well, because they're putting their trust in you. So that's it's great. It's great to hear about it. So how did you then juggle being a GP? Another thing is, another big thing that would have happened. What age were you when you got married?
I was 26.
26 years old, and you, mashallah, have got an 8-year-old daughter. So what age were you when your daughter was born?
I was 28. Yeah.
28. So, and you're now still involved in cricket from a coaching level. You're captain of your local cricket club. You're a GP. You're a mum. You're a wife as well, daughter. How do you juggle all of that? Because some people just leave sports when life gets a bit, again, especially South Asians. If a woman gets married or a guy, they tend to drift away from playing sport. How did you maintain that?
So in the first about 3 or 4 years of being a mum, I did actually kind of leave playing cricket. I think one is you're kind of struggling because you're a new mom, everything's hectic, you're super tired, you're all these hormonal changes and body changes. You don't feel like you want to play cricket because you feel like, oh, I've put on so much weight. And of course, you can't just leave baby and go and play a whole day of cricket. But now, and then I slowly got back into it. And again, it's there having supportive family. So, for example, I remember playing a charity game, and I had Hani, she was about 10 months at the time. And I remember one of my friends came and sat her whilst I played the game. But it's only in the last couple of years where I've kind of got into it I probably play more now than I did when I was 17, 18, and simply because I've got my little girl into cricket. So we train together
Oh, wow.
every Wednesday. So she goes along with the juniors and I train with the seniors. And for matches as well, now she's at that age, so she just comes along. So again, I take all her homework with her, take all the food with her. So while we're batting, she'll come and she loves having a chat to the other girls. And then when we're bowling, I say, okay, this is the time you're going to sit in the clubhouse, you're going to do your work, you're going to have your food. And so it's kind of worked out well. It is hard because again, with her, and there's that kind of pressure as well at a young age nowadays to do all this homework. So I have to do that daily. Every day, that's homework is completely, I don't get any help with that. So that's completely my responsibility. You have to do her homework with her, teach her what she doesn't understand, pack her bag, school uniform for the next day, then get my stuff ready for work the next day. So it's not easy at all, but I think it's rewarding when you put that effort in.
Yeah, well, you probably, time management, something you touched on. I'm sure your time management has to be really tight when you're being able to do all of that. But I'm loving. I was going to ask you if your daughter had taken to cricket, and you must be buzzing that she has taken to it, because that can allow you now to continue on your merry way and enjoy your passion of cricket. Is she showing any signs of what skill set she's got, or is she just doing a bit of everything just now?
Oh, she's a left-handed batter, so
Okay,
that's
nice,
that's what
nice.
she's doing. I'm a bit disappointed because I thought she's quite tall for her age. She's probably one of the tallest in her class. So in my head, I thought she was going to be a pace bowler, but for some
Yeah,
reason, she seems to like leg spin of all things. So I can't bowl leg spin,
Listen,
but
left-handed batter who can bowl a bit of leggy, there's plenty of spots and teams for that. How many people bowl quick? And then the competition, like
hmm.
no, I think she's onto something there. If she can get the art of leg spin and a left-handed batsman, she'll walk into most teams. So yeah, let's keep her going. I like that leg spin, left-handed batsman. Sounds good. So what about your family and stuff now? What do they feel? Do you think with extended family, for instance, do you think you've managed to knock down some of those barriers through the years of, is there any other girls in your family that are now starting to participate in cricket or sports?
um, they're not playing for clubs or anything like that, but I do get some of my family are quite conservative, quite religious, and they I do have get asked about, for example, are there any women's only cricket clubs, which is quite nice as well. So then I try and find details of any women's and girls only cricket thing. So I think it is has opened that up, and again, it's nice because, for example, on Eid, all the kids in the house know this is the cricket.
The
This is
cricket
our cricket
auntie.
auntie.
The
This
cricket
is the
auntie,
cricket
that's
auntie. So
cool.
literally, the
I wish
garden
I
is.
had an auntie like that when I was a kid that would have played cricket with me. It's times are changing now. There's more and more but in your time, and I don't say that. I mean, I'd imagine both you and I are probably around the same age. I'll say I'm older. But with your daughter now, you must be able to see like it's so much easier for her to be involved in cricket, and if she becomes really good, you could kind of help her go through that journey, and she could do her studies at the same time. So she could flourish, but learn from the experiences you've had as well.
Yeah, exactly. The opportunities now are immense, but I think you still need to be aware of the system. And I think me being a doctor, having gone through the system, I know the pathway. I know how to get her trained up, for example, for county cricket. But again, there is a lot of the community who don't know how to get. So a lot of them are still playing this raw street cricket, and they might be super talented, but they aren't sure how to get them in. And I think this is where so much good work being done by, for example, Chance to Shine, all these other organisations that are funding to get coaches out onto the streets doing street cricket. And one of my other roles is I'm on the Warwickshire Inclusion Advisory Board. So again,
Yeah.
Warwickshire have done a lot of work where they are going out into communities, they're delivering programs into schools, and particularly schools, for example, where children get free meals or are from deprived backgrounds. And again, the coaches are all trained to try and pick up any talent and bring it back and get them into the pathway. So from that perspective, a lot's changed and things are a lot better. I mean, we've got these open trials now. Warwickshire did it first, and Cricket Wales have done it now as well, where you can just send in a video from anywhere of yourself playing cricket, and so that you don't even have to kind of try and find out when are the formal trials happening. You just send in video footage and then you'll get called up. So I think a lot of that is good work that's happening.
And how are you finding the results have been off the back of that? Are you finding you're getting lots of different communities, different girls from different backgrounds, boys from different backgrounds that are coming to the game through since starting these, Chance to Shine? What's the kind of, I've heard about them and I've seen the work they do, but what's the kind of results looking like?
So I think the results are good in terms of the kind of grassroots level and coming to training, and even I think Warwickshire now and the junior level is predominantly South Asian, probably the same in a lot of counties. I think where we still haven't been able to follow up or is that actually why we're not replicating those grassroots numbers or those age group numbers into the main team. Why are we seeing 70-80% South Asian kids and then actually 5% at the top? Where are they falling out? Why are they falling out? And is it to do with, parents or pushing them into education? Is it to do with other factors? And I think, again, work is being done to look at that to see why we're not replicating. And actually, I had an interesting conversation with someone at my club the other day where, again, we were talking about this and saying, where are they going. But then he turned around to me and he said, "Well, why look at this game?" And I looked and he said, "Stop the white person." And there's literally two teams, and there was no white person. And he said, "But what do we not need to look at this now as to see why is it that actually we've got a group here of 22 players that are all South Asian, where's everyone else?" And to be fair, that's a good point as well, where what's happened there as well. So I think there is work to be done, and I think essentially we have to make the system fair, equal. And I think if you've done that and you've put every effort into making it an equal system and included people, then I guess that's probably what you can do. And then what happens in terms of the top level is it should reflect all that work that you're doing at the ground level.
Yeah, I agree. Interesting to listen about that. It would be great to hear even more about what's happening at Warwickshire. I have heard lots of good things about Warwickshire. They seem to be doing some really positive work, and going out and connecting with the communities like that will bring so many more people to the game. And you never know where you can spot a new talent as well. And I think it allows people to, when you go and connect with these communities, to learn from those communities as well, because I always found, you probably found it was the same, that people didn't really understand, the background that you came from. They didn't really know how to kind of connect with you. Whereas I think if coaches are getting out and connecting with different communities, it's a great chance to understand a little bit better. Something that we haven't touched on, you just mentioned it there. So, Board of Directors at Wales Cricket Board. When did you get involved in that? And how did you get involved to go into that position?
So that was completely random. I just happened to get a text message from my friend who's now a doctor in London, and we went to university together, and she must have seen the advert pop up. I'd never seen the advert. And she just said, "Oh, this is an advert. I think you'd be really good at this. Why don't you apply?" And I thought, okay, Wales, me from Birmingham, I know nothing about Wales. I know nothing about Wales cricket. And she said, "Just apply, see what happens." And I applied. I got interviewed, I got shortlisted, and then I got the role. Not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that probably the first female Muslim woman to be on that board. And again, it's been a great experience. At the time, our CEO, who was part of the interview panel for me, Alicia Hawkins, she's just one of those, I don't know if you know of her,
I've heard the
doing
name.
fantastic work, doing a lot of great work. And again, kind of I've always talked about me being timid and shy, and actually, again, complete opposite to me, very outspoken, kind of shows you how it's done in what's typically a man's world. And now actually, and credit to her, she's gone to the ECB now as their recreational cricket lead. And again, our chair at the time, Jennifer Owen Adams, again, fantastic gold medal. She's now also gone to the ECB as on their board of directors. And again, being with Cricket Wales, I've seen the work they're doing, and they only have like a 5% South Asian population, but they are, they've basically gone out. They're doing Ramadan leagues. They're again doing Eid events. They were doing iftar events. They're connecting with the community. And I'm really happy when I see that kind of stuff being done. And I think I'm quite lucky in the sense I've been involved with two counties, two boards, Warwickshire and Cricket Wales, and both are doing great work when it comes to connecting with communities. And I think even with Cricket Wales, they are, even despite having only that small population, to be able to still go out there and to do so much work on EDI. And they've actually won an award from the ECB for all the work that they've done on EDI. And it was actually interesting. Mark Frost, who is at Glamorgan and Cricket Wales, he actually used some of the racism stuff and made it into a kind of help make positive changes. So one of the players who had suffered racism at Glamorgan, he's now back into the system, and he actually gave a talk on the experience that he faced. And this talk, there were people from all around the country from different cricket boards, and he actually spoke about how he was treated, and actually people use that experience to say, hang on, how can things change? And instead of him kind of just leaving. He left and now he's come back and now he's working in the board and helping drive equality, diversity, inclusion. So it's good. I mean, we know that this exists. We know that racism exists. We know that inequalities exist, but it's good when you can try and get some positive changes to come out of it to make it better for the upcoming youth.
Well, that's really good to hear. That so he kind of raised issues, and then sometimes when you raise issues, you're not particularly welcomed back so easily, and you're seen as the bad guy almost. And to hear that he's being welcomed back and being given the opportunity to try and help drive change suggests to me that that's a pretty open-minded board and a forward-thinking board, and probably why you're thriving being part of those type of backgrounds. I guess what I would say to you is, it's great that you're involved with Warwickshire. It's great that you're involved in Wales, but yeah, maybe there's opportunities in future to go and maybe get involved in something that needs a little bit more work, because you've now got really good lived experience. Whether you want to do that or not is that's but there's other counties out there that I think maybe aren't where Warwickshire are at the moment, and I think you need people like your ex-CEO that you were talking about, the chair. They've obviously built something really good at Wales. Do you think their work that they've done there has been carried is continuing on with the new leadership?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is one of the great things about Cricket Wales. I think it's kind of instilled into the whole organisation, equality and diversity, and it's kind of at the forefront of everything. In our board meetings, it's one of the main topics that's discussed. If anything, we've got a subcommittee. I'm on the subcommittee for EDI, so it's taken very, very seriously, along with other big domains like safeguarding. EDI is given a lot of importance. And again, same with Warwickshire, the fact they've got an inclusion advisory board where they've got members from across the region, from different religions, different backgrounds, to come on and say, actually, how can we make things better? What can we do? How can we constructively criticize the work, and how can we make changes? How can we do better? I think that in itself is a step forward. I mean, I have heard stories of other boards and I've heard horror stories about other boards, but I think I've been lucky to be able to see two boards where actually they're doing quite well.
Yeah, and you've been part of that, and good for you, and please continue on with that work. I guess my next question is, how is Welsh cricket doing? I played against Wales when I was about 17 years old as an MCC young cricketer. That's the only time I think I've ever played against Wales. How is how is it well played in Wales, and is it lots of clubs, and where's their junior setup, senior setup? Is it thriving? Is there a lot of girls playing cricket in Wales?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at the figures, so Wales is split into 3 regions, and if you look at the figures, every year there's been a dramatic increase in the number of girls clubs, and the number of clubs that have taken a girls section, in the number of girls that are part of All Stars, Dynamos, and it is. I think for Wales, it's a bit tricky because they're part of the ECB as opposed to their own country.
Yeah.
So the players essentially are feeding into the
English system. Yeah.
In the English system. And
like
again,
Robert Croft comes to mind, because Robert Croft. Yeah, he came through the off-spinner that played for England. He came through. He was Welsh, and then played. I think I'm right. Am I right? Do you remember Robert Croft?
Yeah, he did. He played for. Yeah, he was Welsh and he played for England. And then again, you've got a few players who are playing the 100. So for Welsh Fire, they've got women and men who are actually from Wales and playing for them. So they are developing good cricketers, and I think that again is one of their main aims. Is it's for Glamorgan. So where they play, it's slightly confusing to some people in the sense that Wales and Glamorgan, they're 2 different entities, but yet they work together. So kind of at the age group level, it's Wales, but then when they feed into the county, it's then Glamorgan. So Glamorgan, obviously, their aims, but they've got a different board and they've got different. But again, they kind of try and work together with the same principles. So Glamorgan's aim is, of course, to try and feed as many players as they can as well into the English team.
No, it's cool. It's cool to hear about. So Samara, it's been, we've talked through quite a lot of stuff, and I could probably still pick your brain on lots of other stuff that you've done as well. But I guess what's the next? What's your aspirations for your future now? Obviously you're going to have a lot of aspirations for your young daughter, and where she's going to head. That's going to be. But what's your kind of what have you still got? What is it? What is it still that you're wanting to tick off? What is there? There must be something else. You were a doctor, you've not reached your pinnacle yet. I feel there's more to come.
So from a medical perspective, I think I'm now kind of going in as well as my clinical role, but I'm also going to try and do some sort of clinical leadership role because again, I want to change the system in some ways to make it more efficient because the NHS at the moment is struggling a little bit and no fault of anyone's. It's just a lack of funding, not enough staff, not enough resources. So I want to go in and do a bit of management from that perspective. From a cricketing perspective, I think again, it's just trying to play as much as I can, doing new things like wicket keeping just for fun. Commentary again. So I've done a bit of commentary for the last couple of years for the women's Central Sparks games for the Charlotte Edwards and Rachel Hayhoe Flint Trophy. I've done a couple of games this season. So again, that's something I think I'd like to do more on because it's actually a lot of fun. So again, yeah, just making sure that I'm still doing something productive. And again, like helping out with other boards. So my term for Cricket Wales will finish this year. And then after that, if something else comes along, any kind of, or even cricketing organisations like Chance to Shine and things like that, I think I've got things that I could potentially offer. So yeah, I'll probably look for another kind of voluntary type role to see what I can add.
Well, I'm excited. We connected recently, so I'll be following closely now. What you're doing. And yeah, I think from the experience you've got from a medical and from a sporting background as well, and bringing that all together, and your board experience as well now, that you so many areas I think you could go into and help drive change and be a role model, continue to be a role model for young, in particular young South Asian girls out there that you can become a doctor and you can play cricket for a county team, and sky's the limit. But yeah, just from my point of view, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. It's been a pleasure to talk through your journey, and hopefully in future when there's another chapter, another few things that you do, maybe we can chat again on the podcast.
It was an absolute pleasure to be on the podcast, and thank you for having me.
My pleasure.